Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Monday, Dr. Paul. How are you?
All ready and raring to go.
We had a little trip over the weekend.
Yeah.
That was fun.
I had to have you come along and put up my cards and say, Ron, this is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, you're not biting.
So we did make it to the YAL conference.
That was fun.
And I didn't. One thing I told somebody I was disappointed with, not for any special reason, but I like to look at the faces of the people I'm talking to. But the lights, some people put the lights dim on the crowd and they want to light up the stage.
Oh yeah, of course.
But I don't know how many people were there.
Well, I was out there. There was a lot of kids and they were thrilled. They had a great time.
People say that I go there and they're grateful, but I go there because I'm sort of grateful myself that there is still a reception out there, and so I felt good about it, and they were in a good mood.
1,000 kids. I mean, that's great.
They said it was a good speech, but I say no. It was a good audience. The audience makes the speech.
It works well together.
But let's see who's going to make this program. The burden is falling on the both of us.
Uh-oh.
So I'll start off with you in a minute. But I tell you what, there's lots of stuff going on, but and there's a lot of follow-ups too, and we'll be following up first with the wonderful, wonderful bill that Pelosi and Schumer are so excited about.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a couple $1 billion here and there. They got it under $1 trillion, so that's a big deal. But anyway, the bill got passed out of the Senate, has to go to the House, and it is major. And it's up to $740 billion, but they claim that they've targeted because it's called, bill, inflation protection bill. They're going to get rid of inflation by doing everything that's going to increase prices. Yeah. But it will increase inflation too, because they claim that they've cut back on the spending. They put the spending level up here, they cut it down here. Look at what we cut. But no, this is not going to cut any spending, which means the pressure will be on the Fed to do exactly what they're doing, inflating. Yeah. And exactly the reason directly that prices go up. So they didn't talk about that in this bill. They didn't talk about, well, maybe we ought to change the rules and not make it so tempting that the Congress can spend as much as they want ever, start any war they want, and not worry about the bills being paid for now, and the Fed will take care of them. So that's been going on a long time. But there's some very bad stuff in this bill. I mean, they're going to solve the climate problem, and save money. I mean, they're going to save a lot of money on that. They're going to raise taxes a little bit, but it's only going to be on the rich, except by now a lot of people have disproven that even the moderates about taxation, they say, we've looked at this thing. It's going to be a lot more taxes than they claim, and they're saying it's going to hit the middle class. Can you believe that's what's going to happen? Yeah, that's what's going to happen. So I'm sure you didn't have too much cheering to do and say, the bill has gotten through finally. And it looks like this week will be, the House will do their duty, and there'll be at least a few more resistors. Well, no, the Democrats, the Republicans in the Senate, they did at least resist this, but they're not a real obstacle to big spending, because if they were running the show, do you think they'd have cut anything out of the military-industrial complex? That's, I think, where our big problem is the bipartisan agreement on taxes and spending, and the Federal Reserve monetizing the debt.
Well, I often feel at a disadvantage, Dr. Paul, because I'm not an expert in economics and I don't pretend to be. But I look at this and I feel like a Murray Rothbard or something, I feel like a genius. It's like I take all my credit card bills and I look and I'm maxed out on all the cards. I call up my wife and say, hey, we need to get 10 more cards and max them out, because that's the only way to reduce the debt that we have. I mean, $740 billion. As you know, Dr. Paul, and you've said it so many times, we got into this mess by printing several $1 trillion to fight COVID, which we know that was a ruse. But so the idea is, if you do more of what you've been doing to get yourself in trouble, then you'll somehow get out of trouble. It's classic Washington way of dealing with it. But there's one thing that I think is the most ominous, and we talked about this, and thanks to friends at Zero Hedge, and even our enemies at the Free Bacon or the Free Beacon, every now and again they're right twice a day, a broken clock is right. But they reported on one, I think, very important part of this bill. If we can put up that first clip, this is chilling. Anyone with the brain is going to look at this and have a panic attack like I did. I shouldn't even say that. I put a target on my back. If we can put up that first clip. Free Beacon. Dems pose to make IRS larger than the Pentagon, State Department, FBI, and Border Patrol combined. They are going to double the size of the IRS. That's going to get us out of our mess.
Yeah, you know how pleased I must be about this, because the one example that I've used for years is that we don't own our bodies. There are a group of people dealing with some social issues that it's our body and they can't tell us what to do. But if you had self-ownership in a more consistent manner, you would say, well, would there ever be a law in the books in the free society of America that the military can come in and draft you willy-nilly, and that means they own you.
Yeah.
And just think how many times they've done that. It got so bad, though, that they had to change their ways after the Vietnam War. But in a way, I was involved in the debate on the draft and the registration, because we tried to get rid of registration. So why, if they say we're not going to have a draft, why do they keep the registration?
Yeah.
And why do they keep the registration when they're registered? Everybody knows where everybody is anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, they have this registration, which means that they own us. They own every penny we make, and we get to spend as much as they allow us to.
Yeah.
And then they own us because if they need our bodies, and it's just in a narrow sense, this is completely, and send you off to wars that are unconstitutional, immoral, and unwinnable, and nothing more than mischief to benefit some big corporations, then they are in charge. So I think this whole thing, and now to think that they're getting thousands of more people, and then lie to them. Oh, we're only going to go after the rich. Yeah, like the rich never had a loophole. So that's tragic. That is, you picked out the issue that really tells you the sincerity of them trying to do anything decently, on this. So that in itself should be enough for nobody to even look at a bill like this.
And let's look at that next clip. This is from the Free Beacon article. There's a couple of the stats from the bill, if we could put that up. Under the Inflation Reduction Act, negotiated by Senator Joe Manchin, the agency, IRS that is, would receive $80 billion in funding to hire as many as 87,000 additional employees. That would double its workforce. Dr. Paul, I would put this forth. These 87,000 people are not going to be sitting on the phone to help you if you have any questions, to help you fill out your form, or to make sure that you're not overpaying. No, these are going to be the people that you always talk about, federal agents with guns to come around and snoop into every aspect of your life, your digital life, look where you've been, what you've been doing. If they can squeeze another dollar out of some poor person, they sure as heck will.
Daniel, but you got to do your calculations again because they've answered your question about is this excessive and this something. They think they can collect $200 billion with all these agents, and so I would say there is pie in the sky, dreaming. And yet it's going to go by, and there's going to be a lot of people happy. The climate control people, they're going to be happy. IRS agents are going to be happy. So it's going to go on. The military-industrial complex are not crying. They're not going to be crying. So it goes on. The pharmaceutical industry, what they have done over the years has subsidized the drug business, and where they subsidize the vaccines and all that nonsense, and it's been very detrimental. And guess what? When they have all this money, prices go up. So what is the solution? Price controls. Yeah. So they already created an artificial system where it's excessive because of the way they get their money. Then when the prices go up, which is a predictable event, we say, well, we have to control prices, which is a price control and a wage control indirectly, which even throws another monkey wrench into it. So pharmaceutical, getting and trusting and knowing where and being allowed to buy simple drugs. Just, a year or two ago, and maybe it still exists, they ran out of adrenaline. Life-saving drug like that is very, very cheap. So that could turn out to be a very, very serious problem. But right now, it's this control that came up with COVID, that the doctor-patient relationship was essentially eliminated. And you were like an evil monster who said, well, we have to look in and calculate natural immunity. What did you say? They'll cancel you for that.
600% increase in the IRS budget. That's going to save us money, though. So, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Now, you had something from Schumer, I think you wanted to bring up.
Yes, I do, because he's a very important person here, and he carried, and you know what? He's proud of it,
good
too.
For him.
And I'm not quite that way yet. So no, he has here's a quote coming from his statement after the bill was passed. Here it is. He says, quote, "The Senate is making history.
Oh.
I am confident the Inflation Reduction Act will endure as one of the defining legislative measures of the 21st century." And I said, yes, just like Smoot-Hawley, which turned out to be one of the worst bills, which ushered in the Great Depression. Yeah. Now, there's enough stuff in here. There is going to be a turning point on this. They've been getting away with economic murder, because of all the things they do. And you think, how can people trust this system? But the cracks are there, and it's not going to be smooth. The Federal Reserve is under the gun. The spending is never going to stop. They don't even pretend. I know we're in trouble when the answer to this is, the Marxists that are in the Congress now, deficits don't matter. Why are you guys fear-mongering? Well, some of those truths will be proven, that deficits do matter, and people will realize that monetary policy measures and spending matters and all these things. Right now, they're still getting away with it. But the good news is that more and more people are going to wake up, and hopefully we can stir up a little bit of interest on this IRS stuff, because the average person ought to know. Yeah. And there's people who studied this bill in detail and said, no, the only way they can raise money is go to the middle class. They're not going to do it from the very rich.
No.
There aren't enough very rich people. And besides, they're their friends. They're in business together. We don't tax our friends.
Well, the thing is, and you suggested earlier in this segment, Dr. Paul, the Republicans, what are they going to do about it? Yeah, they voted no. Okay. But this is an issue that they could really run. And if they understand that there is a tax revolt in the U.S., there is an opposition to the elites ripping them off, whether it's sending money to Ukraine or hiring a bunch of IRS thugs to come break down your door. And I think there is a sense that this is happening. We see it in places that are unexpected, like CPAC, for example, over the weekend. A friend of ours tweeted me over the weekend saying that in Donald Trump's speech, you're not going to believe this, Dr. Paul, he said, Ron Paul is a great guy. So they have a sense of this. And Steve Bannon, of all people, in his speech, or reportedly from a text I got, said, end the Fed. So there is that sense out there that these are winning ideas, whether they like it or not, where they're coming from or not. They better embrace them if they want to be successful.
To gather up some votes, they did one more thing with the IRS, and that was we added a new tax. And what corporations do, among the mischief of what the regulators do to keep the stock market up. The number one goal is to keep the stock market up. Print money and the stocks go up until they don't go up anymore. But they put a new tax on there. This gimmick. In the midst of not having a unit of account to really understand where we are and have interest rates, they have introduced a new tax. So sometimes what they'll do, because credit is easy and the stock looks like it's going down, well, we need more purchasers. This is what we need. So, well, nobody wants it. Oh, we'll buy them ourselves. Oh, well, we don't have enough cash. That's our problem. Oh, we'll borrow it. And now there's a few people who realize, hey, they're just ripping us off by being able to do that. So they put this is symbolic, of course, they put a 15% tax on any of this money that, for buying your own stock back again. But the principle's dumb anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, in a free market, you might have times you'd buy your own stock.
Yeah.
But this is not that. This is super management of monetary and fiscal policy. So they're going to penalize them. But that I predict will not raise much money. But that's sad because we'll fix it next year. We'll get one next year. But you made a few good points that people are waking up, and there are some good signs of what's happening. And I've frequently said all these discoveries in COVID. I said it's not all bad because it's just going to make about 1 million more people upset and sad. And look at it. The people's sentiments have definitely changed about. I don't think they could get away with COVID right now. I think there's enough resistors out there.
I hope you're right. I worry about that. I hope you're right.
I do too.
This next story that we're going to cover is fascinating because I sent you something last night. CBS, and we always pay attention when the mainstream media actually does some journalism because it's very rare. So CBS News did an investigative report, an investigative documentary on the constant sending of weapons to Ukraine from the U.S. Billions of dollars. And you remember a senator from Kentucky, Rand Paul, who said, shouldn't we have someone to kind of keep an eye on this stuff?
Oh, horrible.
They said, you are a Russian propagandist. You are repeating Putin's talking points. So the CBS News, of all places, they looked into it. They did an investigation, and they found something fascinating that I sent you yesterday saying, this is worth looking into. Let's put up this this tweet. The new CBS Reports documentary, Arming Ukraine, explores why much of the billions of dollars of military aid that the U.S. is sending to Ukraine doesn't make it to the front lines. Quote, like 30% of it reaches its final destination, end quote, from the channel. So this morning, I'm thinking we're going to lead with this story because it's fascinating. Only 30%? Where's the rest of it going? Jihadists, Lake Jackson Police Department?
But you got to look at it from the viewpoint of the Ukrainians because they're coming up short. They had planned on this, and they have a war to win. They're not doing that well. So the answer for them is, look, we need more money. There's something wrong with the system, and so they get only 30%. They get 30% of what was sent to them. And so the answer is send us more weapons. And how many? Rand, I don't even know how much support he got from that. Just have a review of this, and the whole thing is and I have mentioned this, but I don't concentrate on much. They don't audit the Pentagon.
No, they can't.
They don't audit the CIA, and they don't audit the Fed. So I think it's best we have a triad there and audit them all at once. And kick them out.
But here's the fascinating part, though. As I got here this morning for us to talk about this, I clicked on the tweet and I couldn't find it. I went to CBS News article. I couldn't find this doc. They must have spent a couple dollars on this documentary. And so I went on Twitter and did a search. And here's what I found, Dr. Paul. CBS commenting on its own documentary saying, we removed a tweet promoting our recent documentary, Arming Ukraine, which quoted the founder of the nonprofit Blue Yellow, Jonas Oman's assessment in April that only 30% of the aid was reaching its front lines. They deep-sixed their own investigation. I wonder why. Well, here's the next tweet. And here's how they explain, if we can put that up. Since it came out yesterday, he says, since that time, they say that delivery has improved. Additionally, the U.S. military has confirmed that Defense Attaché Brigadier General Garrick Harmon arrived in Kiev in August for arms control and monitoring. It's fascinating. Within a day, they took down their own report saying it was bogus, sorry, we messed up, totally untrue. And Paul Joseph Watson, I think does a great job in exposing this. Put up this next tweet if you can. He tweeted this out this morning. CBS News has sensationally censored its own documentary after the film exposed how only 30% of weapons funding provided by the U.S. makes it to the front lines. Should be a big story. Let's put up the next one. Here's from the article that Paul Joseph Watson wrote about it. CBS News censors its own documentary. He says, announces, we are updating our documentary, quote, after pressure. So pressure was put on them. They took it down. I wonder who by. Well, here's a little bit of a hint, Dr. Paul, and I'll throw it back at you after this. This is the foreign minister of Ukraine. Put this on if you can. Commenting on CBS removing its investigation. It's a welcome first step, but it's not enough. You have misled a huge audience by sharing unsubstantiated claims and damaging trust in supplies of vital military aid to a nation resisting aggression and genocide. And here's the part I highlighted. There should be an internal investigation into who enabled this and why. And I would say, who the heck is Dmitry, whatever his name is, foreign minister of Ukraine, telling the American media, you better investigate your own people for investigating something and finding out something that we don't like. It's insane.
You know, there's a pretty good watchdog to make sure they clean up their act. And I guess accidentally they have some honest people doing there and think they graduated from journalism school and they actually learned something. But if you do it, then you get in trouble. But it reminds me of something else. This is not quite as major as what you report on. But the other day, you recall us mentioning Mark Levin, don't you?
Yeah.
And we made the point that, which a lot of other people made, it's in the media, that United States spends more money than the next 9 countries put together on their military. Yeah. And he didn't like that because it came out hurt. Now, he didn't mention us or say that he was annoyed with us. I didn't see the whole program, but all I know is I was walking through the living room, I caught a 3-minute thing, and he was proving that anybody who said that was absolutely wrong. And he said that, and then they came up with a new statistic, and it showed that the U.S. and the U.S. and China and Russia, if you put them together, spend more money than the U.S. So
I wonder how they calculate that.
But the point is they felt compelled to dispel truth.
Yeah.
You don't dispel lies.
Yeah.
You have to, oh my goodness, truth is leaking out.
Yeah.
We have to stop this. So they quickly have a new study,
And I wonder how long until Americans start turning against these thugs. Basically, he's a thug. You better investigate these American journalists. Well, his government has already closed down all the opposition papers in Ukraine, so that's how they feel about the free media. So, but this is interesting because what also came out a couple of days ago is Amnesty International. Now, Amnesty has been very biased in favor of Ukraine throughout this war, very strongly so. And in fact, Amnesty is considered very close to Western governments, probably funded by George Soros. So they came out with a report over the weekend, you may have seen it, Dr. Paul, where they very mildly said there's a problem with Ukraine putting its military equipment too close to civilian personnel. And this could be a war crime if they keep doing this. Pretty mild report in the context of everything. Well, there was an explosion at Amnesty. The Amnesty International guy in Ukraine quit. He resigned and said, we are promoting Putin's propaganda by reporting this. And it's amazing. Aaron Maté, who's a great progressive and I think a wonderful journalist, he points this out. He says, it's incredible seeing Amnesty attacked for documenting what every minimally observant, independent observer has from the start. See, for example, the Washington Post from March 28th on, quote, Ukraine's strategy of placing heavy military equipment and other fortifications in civilian zones. So this has been widely documented, and when Amnesty very gently reported on it, they've been accused of being Putin's propagandists. They've been attacked viciously. And put on that next one, and here we have a reemergence of their foreign minister, Dmitry Kuleba. He said, apparently Amnesty calls me a mob and a troll, but this won't stop me from saying this report distorts reality. It draws false moral equivalence between the aggressor and the victim, and it boosts Russia's disinformation efforts. This is fake neutrality, not truthfulness. You notice how he never disputed what they reported. He just said, this is hurting our propaganda efforts. And our good friend Caitlin Johnstone from Australia, who spoke at one of our conferences, she made a great point. She said the underlying premise behind these complaints about the Amnesty report is that it's Amnesty International's job to win a propaganda campaign against Russia. That's not their job. It's to investigate crimes against civilians and humanity. So it's it's just another chapter in this whole propaganda war.
You know, in recent months, I've emphasized the thing about nihilism and what cultural Marxism preaches, that you can understand it better if you understand they don't believe truth is achievable. It doesn't exist, and so you can do whatever you want. And I get to think, boy, this really proves their point. It looks like they're doing a pretty good job. Under these conditions, if you don't have a few people give us the information, if we can't find it, you know, the truth doesn't exist. But isn't it amazing, though? We have to give a lot of credit to the people who have you know, looked at it and decided they are telling lies. And statistics, you can find the majority of the American people, if they're told something, well, the government said this. I mean, how many? If we could take all these things out and put it into a real poll on what they said they're going to do with this and get rid of inflation. I mean, that is such a farce. I'll bet you the people who suffer the most, which is the poor and the middle class, they're the ones that know it, and they're still arguing, well, there's no signs of recession here.
Yeah, because we changed the definition.
And what does that do? That builds up more true believers. By them lying through their teeth. It, in a way, it's a back way of getting some assistance, but that people sense the truth. You know, I found that out in campaigning, because I'd say, well, he said that and he said that. Yeah, and I said, why don't you believe it? We don't believe him.
Yeah.
And they say the same words. So a lot of them there, you know, Pelosi's always, you know, bragging about saving the Constitution and preserving freedom, and that's her job. Yeah. So we have one more.
Our last story is a good news story, and I know this is a real irritant. This is a stone in your shoe constantly, and this is the woke march through the institutions, and it's been really heavy in the entertainment industry and the social media industry. Let's put up this next one from our good friends at Zero Hedge. This is good news. Entertainment companies start dumping woke content as viewership tumbles. Oh my gosh, they don't want to see a bunch of dumb, dopey, woke superheroes. You know, so the revenue was way down on some of these offerings. They had to cancel a few Batgirl and Supergirl and all these ridiculous things. So that's, you know.
Well, we can say that is good news, because people are waking up and they're probably not attending and complaining about it. But I think the more important question is, why did they ever start doing it? Why did the people tolerate it? But it's once again is getting information and being deceived, and the deceivers are out there, and the deceivers, which is this group of people who have infiltrated, they have positioned themselves in the Justice Department and the CIA and the whole works, so the influence is there, and social media, so that's probably what happens. But the real question is we need more people alert, and I keep thinking, you know, about I went through that decade of the 60s, living it in the sense of reading all that stuff and all the people that died, is why did you ever do it? Why do you go in? And one of the things that they told me in the debates that just aggravated me, we can't quit now because we don't want to let those men and women die in vain. Can you believe anything dumber than that? Evil, So I guess
the market works. People don't want to watch that garbage, so they're going to stop making it.
Yeah, and you know the market is going to be challenged on that issue as well because of ESG, because of the investments. They've infiltrated there and put pressure on behind in the monetary system, including the Federal Reserve, as well as the holder of the biggest investment company, asset company, Larry Fink. He's a true radical environmentalist, and he deals with $10 trillion, and he has control of guiding funds and where they go and all, and that's making them invest in these bad companies. So some of this stuff coming together, plus the bursting of the bubble. So that's why I think it's a safe prediction to say things are likely to get worse before they get better.
They should be investing in the Ron Paul Institute, right? Because that's a sound investment in the future. I'll just close if you put up this clip by reminding everyone it's a Monday. Get your tickets for Anatomy of a Police State, September 3rd, just a few weeks away in Washington, D.C. It's going to be a great conference, Dr. Paul. We've got a lot of interest. We actually have a lot of interest in people joining the host committee and being part of the VIP special receptions that we have. That's always a lot of fun. If you are interested in that and you don't have any info in front of you, go to ronpaulinstitute.org and subscribe to updates from the Institute. Of course, we won't sell or rent your name out, but we will keep you up to date on what we're doing. We won't do it all the time. We won't bother you, but we'll keep you posted. But get your tickets. You can go to ronpaulinstitute.org. There's a little link up there that you can get your tickets, and we'll have a great old time. We are the uncompromising organization when it comes to non-interventionism and the protection of civil liberties. We are not a beltway group. We stick to the principles, and we appreciate your continued interest and support for the Institute. Dr. Paul?
Yes, and I want to also thank our viewers for tuning into our program, and hopefully many of you will get to our conference. But you know, today we talked about various things. We talked a lot about the tax bill and this pretense that it was going to solve inflation. I mean, that's about the silliest thing ever. Daniel used a stronger word than that, maybe evil too. You know, but the whole thing is, the one part of that really bothers me is that they don't recognize that our lives are important. We have a right to our life. We have the right to the products of our labor, which way it's supposed to be, but we don't. We concede the fact, or allow them to concede the fact, that the government owns us and they own what we produce, and we can use it or keep it or spend it according to what the government allows us to do. So we don't live in a free country, and eventually that will lead to what we have here: excessive rules and regulations, deficits that can't be financed anymore with just routine taxation. It has to go with the secret evil taxation of just printing money and diluting the money, prices going up, and let the middle class pay the bills. But even the new regulations putting in this bill, which is supposed to stop inflation, which is total nonsense, is not going to solve those problems at all. It's going to make things much worse. There's going to be higher taxes and higher spending, and it will move us more quickly to that point where we will make changes, because this system has a deadline. It will not continue, but we don't know when that'll be. So fortunately, let's hope it lasts a while longer so more people can prepare physically and psychologically and family-wise and financially for a time that might change drastically. Because if we do the wrong thing and do the things that they did in the Depression and prolong it, Depression really lasted for 15 years. If we allow that to happen, this one could last even longer. And people say, we don't, why are you getting so worried about it? We don't even know if we're in a recession left. Yeah, it's not let alone a depression. Well, the people will speak, and we could take a poll of the people at the grocery store and ask them if they think they're in a recession. Anyway, the answers are not complex. The answers are just understanding and promoting the cause of liberty. We had it once, we had a taste of it, and yet, unfortunately, the largesse of government promises, people were tempted with it, and it shifted into a welfare state and a warfare state where we have an empire to defend and a welfare condition that we can't afford. So it will come to an end, and I think that we should be optimistic enough to say that people do wake up and eventually we will see a change for the better. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.